the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister has released a working paper that sheds light on the global trend in the share of religious minorities and majorities. Over 167 countries have been examined, and a time period of 65 years has been considered. The paper has provided a detailed cross-country analysis of the status of minorities and what were the religious dominations of 1950, what was the percentage that they used to hold, and what is the percentage change that they have witnessed now. In this telecast, we wish to explore the overall findings of this particular report, what it says, and what is the real methodology that they have used to come to this conclusion. In fact, we're also going to get to hear from our experts. Joining us on this panel is Mr. Sumit Peer, Senior Political Commentator, Dr. P.S.P. Rao, Consultant Surgeon, Manipal Hospital, is also joining us from Bengaluru. Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, also joins us on the show. In fact, we're going to now exactly show you what the formula of this exercise has been. And this is exactly what it entails. For the majority of the religious dominations as defined in 1950, the people responsible for the report say that we first note its share of the total population in 2015. This is the formula, folks, that we're talking about. Next, we look at the rate of change in the share of population for the religious majority as defined 65 years ago, which was in 1950, from 1950 to 2015. This is the key metric based on which we do our main analysis and minor refinements. In other words, we study the distribution of the rate of change in the share of the majority religion in countries around the world by focusing on the following measures. And here is the formula. The rate of change in share, which could be a particular number, is equal to the share of majority as defined in 1950 to 2015 minus the share of majority in 1950 divided by the share of majority in 1950 and multiplied by 100. And this is exact formula that has been used for this particular assessment. Moving on, we in fact also focus on the hypothesis, which is very important for this report, and this is what it entails and says. Our main hypothesis is that a reducing majority, say for Hinduism, that is a negative rate of change in the share of majority population, and tautologically an increase in share of the majority population from 1950 to 2015, which actually means that we can safely conclude that there exists an overall congenial environment for increasing diversity in that particular country. We'll get to this point momentarily because that's exactly the important case study here. And a process of assigning majority ID in the RCS DEM data set, that is perhaps the call word for this particular report. In this data set, the smallest factor, greater than 50%, is designated as a majority religious denomination in the data set and labeled as majority ID. The majority ID could be assigned to three categories of denominations: a subgroup of religion, which in itself crosses 50% threshold, for example, Islam. And for example, in the Czech Republic in 1950, the Latin Rite Roman Catholics constituted 76.3% of the total population, while the Christian majority was 93.75%. Since the subgroup, Latin Rite Roman Catholic, was big enough to cross the 50% threshold, it was assigned the majority ID. All right, moving on, we are also going to focus on the process of the minority, and we are going to be using a particular country, in this case Saudi Arabia, which is also labeled as a country where the majority religious denomination has decreased its share because the 1950 majority denomination was reduced to 35% in 2015. Therefore, the majority ID shifted to the bigger denomination of Sunni Muslims, which constituted 82% of the population in 2015. And moving on, this is the map as per this study, which talks about the rate of change in the share of the majority. And the ones that are in green and in light green or fluorescent green have had a change of minus 50 and minus 10, and the dark green ones minus 150, and the changes, as you can see, reflect in the United States, and of course that change that you see in India is also quite significant there. All right, let us in fact go across to the big screen and show you how this analysis looks like in the Indian subcontinent. And of course, there's been this great change in the Muslim population in India. And let's also look at our neighbors. In 1950, the Hindu population was 84.68%. It's at 78.06% now. The Muslim population was at 9.84%. It's increased to 14.09%, over 40%. Christians have also gone up from 1950 to 2050. The Jains from 0.45% to 0.36%, an unlikely decline. And the Buddhists have also, of course, increased. The Sikhs also going up by a very handsome percentage. And Pakistan, if you look at the Muslims, in 1950 they were 84% of the population, and today they are 93%. In fact, the one area that should be very important here is how the Hindu population has declined over the last 65 years, from 1950 to 2015, from 13% to a mere 2%. The Christians in Pakistan have grown from 1% to 2%, but it's the Hindu population that you have to focus on, which has considerably declined. In Bhutan in 1915, the Tibetan Buddhists had a percentage population of 72%, that rose to 84%. The Hindu population was at 23%, but in 65 years it came down to 11%, which is, of course, startling the least. In Sri Lanka, the Buddhist population, which is of course the majority there, was at 64%, grew by 67%. The Hindus were at 20%, came down by 15%. The Christians from 9% to 8%. The Muslim population in Sri Lanka also grew from 7% to 10%. The same formula that I elucidated at the beginning in my monologue is obviously used in these case scenarios as well. In Afghanistan, the Shia Muslims were at 10.7%. That rate is consistent in 2015 as well. The Sunni Muslims at 88.7%, and of course a marginal increase of the Sunni Muslims. So there is no other minority that exists in Afghanistan at this point in time. Bangladesh, let's take a look at Bangladesh. The Muslim population was at 76%. The Muslim population grew to 90.04%. The Hindus at 23%, and of course came down to 8%, a radical decline from 23 to 8%. The Buddhists obviously have had a marginal decline there as well. The Christians at 0.17%, and there is again a marginal increase with the Christian population in Bangladesh as well. So looking at all these scenarios and the report, it's very, very evident, Professor Nalapat, that this report also talks about a conducive environment where minorities have thrived, where minorities have prospered, and they have increased not only their contribution to the GDP of the nation, but the GDP of the nation has also included them in their prosperity and their abundance as well. What do you make of this report? Of course, if you speak with the opposition, they will say there is no basis for such a report. But the fact of the matter is that we have not had a census. Even in the last census, Professor Nalapat, there was an increase in the Muslim population in India, and yet there is constant admonishment of India and its minorities being mistreated and ill-treated. What are your thoughts on the entirety, and of course also reflect upon the data that we have given at the beginning of this show, sir?
Frankly, the fact is that this shows the utter falsity and irrelevance of so much of Western media, frankly, which is infected with propaganda from the Sino-Wahhabi lobby. And that propaganda has been consistent from even during a period when the Congress was in power. And the Congress, unfortunately, is echoing some of these ideas that basically the Muslim community is going down in India. It's now, in fact, for the last 5-6 years, you have got newspaper outlets and television commentators talking about genocide of Muslims in India. Now, They don't talk about the quote unquote, genocide of Parsis or genocide of Jains, both of whom have come down. Why? Because they are highly educated and their rate of growth of population has come down. But they talk about the Muslim community that as committing genocide, when the reality is it has gone up to, it is soon going to double itself from the proportion it had in 1947. And this is what the data bring out. So this is an absurdity that's been said by the Western press. Second absurdity, they completely ignore what's going on around India. What is happening in Afghanistan? I mean, for Shia Muslims, they are horribly treated as they are in Pakistan, for example. But where are the Hindus? Where are the Buddhists? There are none. Where are the Christians? There are none. And as for Pakistan, you have got an increase in the Christian population. Yes, it's a very tiny population to begin with, and it's still tiny. But at the same time, the Hindu population has been drastically reduced. I don't see the New York Times talking about that. I don't see CNN and BBC talking about that. I don't see, the London Times talking about that. Fortunately, not all the Western media is biased. The Express in the UK, a very prestigious paper, has carried two reports which are basically presenting a much more balanced view, a much more factually accurate view on India. So I'm just shocked to see that Western media ignore reality, including in their own countries, if I may point out, and they fall a prey to the propaganda of the Sino-Wahhabi lobby. It just shows you how strong this network is and how actively this network is working to demonize India in the Western world, and of course do the same in India, where the Western world is concerned. And I'm sorry to say, politicians complicit in this demonization are being welcomed like heroes in the Western world, because there are many people in the Western world who have bought onto this false, completely false Sino-Wahhabi lobby. And these figures, these are authentic figures, compiled largely during the time of the Congress government, if I may add. And these authentic figures, I don't believe much of the media in the West is ever going to cover this. Why? Because it shows those journalists to be lies. It shows those editorial writers to be absolute purveyors of untruth. It shows them to be prisoners of the Sino-Wahhabi lobby. And that lobby is basically, unfortunately, running riot in the West, is running riot in the United States in particular, and giving a completely false picture of India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Sumit Peer, let's understand from you as well, what is the significance of this analysis of this particular report that we have just presented to you, which is also something which has been put out by the Economic Council Advisory. It's important to note that a 40% plus increase is not by any means small. I've shared with you what our neighbors have done and how the Hindu populace has continuously, steadily declined to the point of being completely, perished from these states and nations. Whereas India, which has always been accommodating of minorities, has always been inclusive of minorities, has been targeted time and again. And obviously, the opposition, like Professor Nalapat also alluded, has an agenda. They want to shoot down this report. In fact, Sasuddin Owaisi went on to say of the AIMIM that this is perhaps straight out of the WhatsApp University and it has no basis in fact. What do you make of this? And why is this a wake-up call? Not only perhaps for the Hindu community, but also for the Muslim community as well, that, an increase, a ballooning of population without contribution to the economy or, benefiting from the economy or, progressing in the economy is futile.
Vinny, thank you very much for having me on this show. This is a very important show. You know why? Because every day we talk of issues, we talk of political developments, but this is the question of civilization here. This is the question of culture here. This is the question of identity here. This is the question of being a slave or not being a slave here. I'll be direct. You see, Hindus in this country are safe and will be safe till the time demography is with us. The day demography changes, look at the 1,000 years of your history, you know what happens. Hindus have paid jizya. Hindus have been maximum slaughtered all in the whole world. Hindus, when Taimur Lung came to Delhi, to India, how many Hindus did he slaughter? He made those pyramids of, cut heads of Hindus, and so that people could fear them, right? That is what Taimur Lung do. And some people are fancy in naming their kids as Taimur, but that's besides the point. Now, this is what has happened here, and this is how the things have been kind of moving here. Now, the question here is that how do we want to look at it? Because to us, it's a wake-up call. Because look, we need 43% increase is a substantial increase. It's almost a 50% increase. And you are decreased by 10%. Your 10% is at a much bigger number and their 50% is at a lower number. So if you look, they have increased by 50%, and if your numbers are small, your decline is super high. So in the larger space, you are losing power, you are losing demographic control, you are losing the control on Shasan and Prashasan. It is a ticking time bomb, which the Hindus of the country have to wake up and realize. Because if you don't realize, let's not forget what are Meena Bazaars. Let me tell them what are Meena Bazaars. We have this Meena Bazaar in Delhi. Do you know what is that, Vinny? The Meena Bazaar is, when Mughals used to win those wars with the Rajputs and all mostly, they will get a Hindu woman and all and parade them naked and sell them within the forts. Then Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar said, no, this is not a good idea. Let's have a full-fledged bazaar so anybody can come and buy them. And they were, sold into Yemen, I don't know, God forbidden countries. So the Bazaar world was a Meena Bazaar. That is the contribution of Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. And let me tell you another thing. The Johar which happened in Chittor, the third time it happened was under Akbar. When Akbar could not find any of the women, he slaughtered 40,000 Hindus. We have seen this, and Akbar is not an alien which I am talking from, thousands of years back. Akbar is here is his legacy. So our historians, leftist historians named it Akbar the Great. It is a very wake-up call that in all the surrounding countries, the Hindu population is dipping. It's a very wake-up call in all the surrounding countries in India, Hindu population is dipping. And there is a dichotomy, there is there's a truth which nobody can negate. Muslim population everywhere in the world, around surrounding countries in India is increasing. Now, when it is 50%, they will ask for a division. At 51%, they will ask for then it will be Syria. And at 60-70%, it will be Jizya. Now the Hindus have to wake up. How long do they want this to happen? Division, Sharia and Jizya. These are the three things which have happened in the past, which will happen in the past. Owaisi Saab is rattled. You know why he is rattled? He had an agenda of Ghazwa-i-Hind. It is the Ghazwa-i-Hind is to convert India into a Muslim country. This is from the Holy Book. They have not casting any aspersions. This is what the Holy Book has to say. And remember Colonel Gaddafi, he said we'll control and we will invade the Europe and capture the Europe without firing one bullet. What was his idea? Demographic invasion of Europe. And you see what is
Sumit,
the biggest problem of Europe?
what do you make of the opposition, including Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, casting aspersions on the authenticity of this report?
See, anything which unites Hindus will be a problem for them. But if Hindus see this, they have to wake up and smell a coffee because the things are moving fast. The sand is slipping under your toes. And they don't want you to do that. They want to do Jatigat Janaganna. Yadav kitne hai, Kurmi kitne hai, Brahman kitne, Kshatri kitne. Then they want to go to states, district, taluka, molla, gali, kucha. So they want to see you as a divided house. But if you look as a cumulative, as a community, and Honorable Prime Minister said with respect to Rohingyas, jinke zyada bachche ho rahe hain. I have seen Rohingya families with 32 kids. Now, if this is the rate, look at the replacement of India. It's less than 2.1. Look at the replacement of Hindus and compare the replacement rate of Muslims. It's pretty high. So now look at a country like Pakistan. Birth rate is 3.6. At 3.6, we need in 20 years the population is going to double. They have the capability to double their population in 20 years. And where are the Hindus of Pakistan? Where are they everywhere? So Congress will be rattled. Anything which is spoken of Hindu good, when you talk of the Hindu interest, they'll be rattled. They want to divide Hindus into chota, tabka, firka, caste, subcaste, uska caste mein caste, so that collective Hindu thought can never come in. If the collective Hindu thoughts never come in, they will divide and rule, factor will work. Wasn't Akhilesh Bhaiya and Lalu Yadavji talking about Dalit Muslim, Yadav Muslim? So they have to devise their own formulas. I have Muslim as a block, I will take one caste from Hindus and that will be my winning formula. This unification of Hindu, which the Prime Minister Modi has warned us directly. He has warned us directly, the people who produce more kids. Now, this is the survey from a government agency. This is not from an NGO. This is not from a news channel. This is not from you and me. It can't be a perception. This is from a responsible government agency. Right. It is a big wake-up call we need. And if we do not wake up now, the time will be too late, because if it crosses, it becomes a 60-40, it is anybody's game then. I will be very, look at the history around it. Just 1 second, sir. 1 second today. Iran, they converted in 22 years, right? Egypt, 32 years. Lebanon, 40 years. Just 40 years. In this country, they've been only failing for 1,000 years, but I don't know how long if the demographic shift keeps on happening. If the Hindus do not wake up, if the government of the day does not bring a population control bill, if the number of kids are not limited, if the things go like that, your future generations, my future generations, and the people watching this broadcast, their future generations would have to again pay jizya. I'm telling you, I'm very direct. You have to pay jizya again.
Okay, let's get a response from Dr. Rao on what you have said. Dr. Rao, is Sumit being hyperbolic at this point in time? Or do you think there's more that meets the eye when it comes to the shrinkage of the Hindu population and this expansion of the Muslim population? Obviously, there are serious concerns related to this report as well. What benefits that go to minorities and how perhaps some of the other minorities which do not find that kind of a number in this table will be relegated?
Good evening, Vineet and all the panelists and viewers. I am an avid reader of history. And it has always been said, those who don't learn from history will suffer the same fate as what has happened. Now, if you see the entire history, Sumit is only talking about India and its surroundings, but if you take the history of the world, you will find that demographic change has brought huge geopolitical changes, and I'm sure Professor Nalapat will agree with me on that. And sometimes it is easier to gradually change the demography rather than attack a nation and then hold it to ransom and change it violently. So if demographic change occurs, then the entire identity and culture of a particular nation will change. Now let's get back to India. If you take the history of the world, for centuries, India has been accepting refugees from all over the world. And our syncretic culture, our tolerance should not become our weakness, that we allow democratic change which leads to an extent where our culture and our identity is changed. And how does demographic change occurs? There are two major ways. One is by immigration. So we need to be ensure that illegal immigration doesn't occur. We need to secure our borders for that. And we can't have border states which are lax about this or even involved in it, in illegal immigration.
But Dr. Rao, immigration is perhaps a fraction.
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Of
so
a number
that is the
that
one
you propose. It's just a fraction, sir.
Yes, but state by state, you will have the entire situation changing. Second is the actual population increase due to high birth rate. Now, high birth rate across the world, whichever community it is dependent on infant mortality rate and education of women. Now, if you have a community which suppresses its women, doesn't allow them to be read and to get educated, then you will definitely have a higher population rate in that community. This is what we are seeing.
Okay.
Second is the infant mortality rate. This hygiene.
So who's supposed to do something
about
about this? Professor Nalapat, who's supposed to do something about this lack of education, or perhaps even a system which promotes education in a space where it really doesn't lead to progress?
Actually, the fact is that across the board, irrespective of religion, once you have educated people, once you have high income people, the total number of children born per individual, especially if you have, for example, a uniform civil code, it's very important for the sake of justice to women, and not just seeing women as capable of only one thing, but seeing them as equal partners, helpmates in everything. You will find a huge difference. And that is why education of women is important. Unfortunately, education was not made compulsory in 1947. But it was a BJP government under Vajpayee that ensured that madrasas were given the option of teaching English and teaching various modern subjects. So they were given the option of, and they were also had access to the internet. Now these frankly, in every religious school of every community, it is important to have a view of the world that the internet provides. And this is, now you can see what's happening in Scandinavia, one of some of the most liberal parts of the world. Today, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, Denmark, for example, completely turned to the right. The same thing is happening in Sweden. Same thing is happening in other countries in Europe. You may see Marine Le Pen as the next president of France. If there was a real democracy in the Netherlands, they are trying to suppress it. You will have Geert Wilders as the Prime Minister of Netherlands. He's being kept away because he's considered too extreme. The fact is that their welfare system gives a huge amount of benefit based on the number of children you have. So what happens? This is the same situation in some part in the UK, US also. Those families who don't want to work or who don't want to get the education to work or who cannot get the education to work. In the US, for example, that's the problem. Not in Scandinavia, not in the UK, but in the US, still in some parts. What happens? They keep having more and more children and collecting more and more money from the state, even as children and as adults. And this is something that needs to be checked and reversed by more education and by limiting benefits to a limited number of children.
Absolutely. Sumit, so is Uniform Civil Code, like you also mentioned, the solution here? And how long is India supposed to be this citadel of tolerance?
We need, if tolerance means cannibalization, then you are a fool of first kind. Now, I'm not saying you and we are the fools of first kind. We cannot cannibalize our identity, our nation, our ethos, and our culture in the name of being tolerance or being secular or being something, where the West defines the parameters. It's very simple. I've seen a lot of videos from, Gaza. Then women are saying we have a lot of children because if a couple of them die, so others can still live and continue the fight. Where in the community...
I'm sorry, I want to make a point here. The healthcare in Gaza, the education in Gaza, the living standards in Gaza where the population is effectively unemployed, in some part because of Israeli policy, but also because of the education system provided by Hamas, which teaches fanaticism and nothing modern. You have a huge amount of international aid gone into Gaza, and there was an infrastructure, not anymore, which was among the best in the world. So you have a whole population that has no jobs, but living very well on external handouts. That is a very, very damaging economic system.
Right, sir. So, absolutely right, sir. Sumit, finish off. We've run out of time.
Vinny, the issue is that there's a community who does not believe in family planning. The family planning within that community has failed. In the Hindu community has worked. So what do? You bring in a law, you bring in a uniform civil code, you bring in a population bill, and if anybody has more than X amount of children, through one wife or multiple wives or whatever, such people should be denied the right to vote. Because if you don't give them the right to vote, then I'm using, my reproductive system as a way to have the people who can vote against a particular system or a particular community or a system which is not logical. That's the way you have to control it, because you cannot let the population of one person become the debacle of another person. Right? This is what is happening here.
All right, Sumit. Appreciate you joining us. Professor Nalapad, Dr. Rao, thank you so much for being on this important discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.